Assalamualaikum and a very good day everyone. So today I, Auni Zulfaka, will present to you about the climate change awareness and risk perception among the financial institutions employees in Malaysia. So this is just an overview of the abstract for this study. As we know that climate change is currently in the spotlight of the researchers, policymakers, regulators, and also financial players. So realizing that the global financial industry has started to play an important role in fighting climate change, so this study was conducted to explore the awareness and risk perception among financial institutions employees in Malaysia. And the result found that most of the respondents were actually acknowledged about the climate change as a threat to the environment and the impacts on the stability to the financial system as a whole. Thus, it is crucial for the to organize an outreach program and training to increase the climate change adaptation knowledge levels, which organized by the individual financial institution itself, in order to improve their employees' ability to promote awareness about climate change and reach large proportions of the public in Malaysia. So, this is the introduction for this study. Like all other countries in the world, Malaysia also experienced a warming and rainfall irregularities, particularly in the last 2 decades. So businesses and economic activities were disrupted, and they had to shut their operations, especially when there is any financial crisis events such as floods, drought, where sometimes the banks have to borrow moratoriums cost on the loan repayment provided to those who are affected by such disasters. So we can see that there is actually the connection between the climate change and the financial surveys, and how it is actually significant. It brings a significant financial risk to the financial sector. So according to the Francisco and Valentina in 2019, climate change actually can increase the frequency of banking crises from 26% up to 248%, as compared to rescuing insolvent banks, which is serious. So recognizing climate change risk and their impact on the stability of the financial system in this country, so Bank Negara Malaysia has released a discussion paper on the climate change and principle-based taxonomy, which aim to provide an overview of climate change and its effect on the financial system. Apart from that, BNM and also Security Commissions of Malaysia also started to form a joint committee on climate change, or also known as a GC3, in order to encourage the financial sector towards a low carbon economy, and at the same time to facilitate the businesses toward transition towards sustainable practices in order to protect and heal the earth. So the purpose of this study is actually to identify whether uh, the perceptions of employees who work under the financial industry regarding climate change as a financial risk is essential to prepare financial institutions on climate change impact. Secondly, uh, the study also to show that a financial institution's employee also can be a proper agent of change, whose possible role as a climate change message carrier. If this group could understand how climate change can threaten the financial system's stability, they will apply appropriate action to reduce climate change risk and increase public concern about climate change through the financing activities. So, the literature review in this study will look at the three main components, which are awareness and the knowledge on the impact of climate change. The second one is the attitude toward climate change, and the third one is a risk perception toward climate change. So, as stated by Lorenzo and Pigeon in 2006, they stated that most of these individuals relate the climate change through their personal experience or trust in other societal factors. Meanwhile, Boyce and Stanistreet in 2012 believe that there is also a so-called knowledge behavior gap that could ascertain the direct interaction between knowledge and behavior, especially towards climate change. And this is because the behavior is also influenced by having a positive attitude towards climate change and taking action. Meanwhile, under risk perception toward climate change, Bank Negara Malaysia in 2019 has categorized the risk into three types of risk, which are physical risk, transition risk, and also liability risk. Apart from that, the public perception of risk regarding the possible consequences of climate change is of a great importance also. Besides shaping climate policies, risk perceptions also plays a central role in adaptation and reduction initiative. Okay, so now let's take a look on the research methodology in this study. So this study was conducted using a quantitative research approach. The survey was conducted truly online. The particular reasons of for this circumstances was the limited access due to the reimpositions of Malaysians movement control order, as this study was conducted on last January 2021 until February. And we got about 84 sample size respondents over various financial institutions, including investment house, insurance, takaful operators, as well as a financial association in Malaysia to answer these questionnaires for research and analysis. So this questionnaire is divided into five sections. The multiple choice questions in this questionnaire using a Likert scale to figure out about the climate change awareness, attitude of the employees, their risk perception toward climate change, as well as their accessibility to sources about climate change information. And the data gained from this study, from this questionnaire, then evaluated using statistically method through IBM SPSS Statistics 26. And all the descriptive statistics such as frequency, percentage mean, and standard deviation were used to present each respondent's demographic information. So here are the result and analysis. So basically, like I said just now, we have about 84 respondents, which 52 of them were females and 32 of them were males. Let's take a look on the type of financial institutions of this respondent. So majority of the respondent works in a commercial bank, which is about 36 of them. The second highest amount of the respondents come from the financial advisory or research house, training center, or regulator, which consists of IBM, IFIM, and other regulatory bodies. Okay, in terms of the working experience, it seems like majority of the respondents had 1 to 5 years of working experiences as compared to those who has worked for 6 to 10 years. There is only about 3 respondents. 11 to 15 years, only 4, and 15 years and above, there is about 9 respondents. Okay, one of the sections of the questionnaire is to determine the level of climate change awareness. So let's just look at this roughly. If you look at the first question, the climate change is real and it is happening, which we can see that majority of them actually agree with this statement, which they are actually aware that climate change is happening. Okay, the last questions on this section. The worldwide increase in extreme weather events such as typhoon, floods, drought, hurricane, heat wave, and wildfire caused by climate change. Also, majority of them are agreed with this statement. So basically, they know that all of these events are caused by climate change. So that's why I say that most of the majority of the respondents, they are actually aware of this climate change event. So next here is to identify the risk perception toward climate change. Let's take a look on the first question. The climate change is supposed to be a concern for the financial institution sector in Malaysia. And yes, 69 of them will agree with the statement as well. Meanwhile, only just 3% of 3% doesn't agree with this. Okay, the second last question of this section, the financial institution should integrate climate consideration into their financial risk management. And yes, there are about 84.5% agreed to integrate this climate related risk into their financial risk management. And only 1% doesn't agree about this. Meanwhile, other 12 respondents are actually not sure. Okay. Here are the graph that we can see most of the respondent can access the informations about climate change through the internet and websites. Well, this is not a surprise because nowadays people are depending on the social media to know the latest updates instead of like they read directly through a newspaper or they watch the commentary. I think the internet and website would be the most convenient sources for this kind of issue. Next is to identify the differences in the level of awareness on the impact of climate change based on gender. So if we take a look, we are using the t-test to identify the differences between the genders on the level of awareness. And a significant value of P equals to 0.74, which is greater than 0.5 critical alpha value. So therefore, it can conclude that by accepting the null hypothesis, there is no significant difference in awareness of climate change between male and female employees. Okay, here are the summary of reliability statistic for this study. Like I said just now, we look at three main components of the focus section, which are knowledge on the impact of climate change, attitudes toward climate change, and risk perceptions on climate change. So, in order to identify whether the questionnaires are actually reliable or not, we use the Combat Alpha to identify the high level of reliability. So, basically, we can see that two of the questions are more than 0.7, which according to Sekaran and Boji 2010, a questionnaire considered attaining a high level of reliability when the value of Cronbach alpha exceeds 0.7. However, if we take a look on the group of knowledge on the impacts of climate change, that's the only section that actually below of the benchmark of Cronbach alpha level, which is only 0.565. So, the conclusion from this study shows that the result shows that most of financial institutions employee actually acknowledge that global climate change is happening. And most of them also agree that the effects are already being felt in Malaysia, but they are not aware of its problem and how to tackle them, which is of climate change. So while this study found a large percentage of the financial institutions employees who agreed that financial institutions should integrate climate consideration into the financial risk management, the majority also agreed that financial institutions should appoint staff or team to manage the financial risk of climate change to its asset. So here are the three recommendations from this study. The first one is the financial, even though most of the financial institution employees are already aware about this issue, however, it is recommended that the financial institution, especially the individual institution, to have more rigorous efforts of additional training for staff and management on climate change or sustainable finance. I bet there's like more to explore on this area instead of only focus on the content on the product itself. Second one is to expand the SME or subject matter expert present to focus on the environmental and climate change impact to guide adaptation strategies in that particular financial institution itself. Meaning what? Meaning to say that the financial institution needs to hire those who are expert in this area, whether those who are expert in climate change or sustainability, to help them to come up with the new guideline or adaptation strategies. And the last one is the it is recommended to increase the industry and government engagement with the individual financial institution in order to understand a better consideration climate change risk management approach. So it should be like a collaboration of a three giant bodies, which is the government, the regulators or industry, as well as the financial individual financial institution itself. So that will come up with a very strong fundamental for the financial institution to combat climate change as a part of their effort. With that, I thank you.